recording later. But yeah, we would like to do that. So thank you very much for coming. And also, the topic we're going to discuss. Monika and myself, we decided to skip the presentations about ourselves because we think that the presentation and the topic we're going to discuss is much more important. So we'll really just ask you one question before we start. And this question, so what brought you here? Why this topic is interesting for you? And if you could use the chat just to answer this one question, that would be great. Yeah. Solidarity. Thank you, Vincent. Professional interest, Bettina. Thank you. Compassion. Mm. Mm-hmm. So Ukrainians have got a lot of solutions. Yeah, that's correct. Hope to understand better from the inside and from, and just not papers. Yeah, thank you. To hear from people who are experiencing the war, impact of the war, topic regarding all of us, everyone is affected, yes, in various ways by the war and its consequences. To hear it from you. Thank you, Anya. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed for your comments. Improve understanding and awareness, stay engaged. Thank you. So there are a lot of good reasons that brought you here, and we do hope to have a meaningful conversation, because for us, it's not only to present our views from inside and from outside, but most importantly, this is for us to discuss what all this mean, what are the changes we are facing at the moment as people and personally and and professionally as interculturalists, what we can learn from this, and most importantly is what we're going to do about it. Yeah. So will there be any changes? Because we are facing the global changes, and so what does it mean for us? And is there anything that we have to change also as interculturalists? Okay, so then we'll start with the presentation. I will go first, presenting you very briefly, I think, the view from inside, and then I will pass over to Monika to speak about war from outside. So there will be a presentation. I will share the screen. Yeah, I do hope that you see the screen now.
All is good.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. I like this bit of art of Katarina Dobroyer because it shows actually how life can change very, 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 very fast. And this quote I took from Prague, from Prague's Museum of History, and it was there like everything was forever until it was no more, because things can change very quickly for everyone and can change dramatically. Just a second. When I'm going to speak about the war from inside, I will do that through the prism of the Ukrainian values and character mainly, which means that I don't want to tell you about all the atrocities or all the bad things that the war has brought to us, but I would rather concentrate my attention on how we cope and what helps us to cope, and what are the value systems of Ukrainians and the character that helps us to fight back and also to gain all the support we're having from other countries, which is of course very valuable and we appreciate it very much. First of all, I would say that we've got this kind of mentality here that the state is us and all of us, and each of us and everyone has got the personal responsibility of what is happening in the country. It happened to be very helpful during the war times, but of course it was not developed like during 3 days. Unfortunately, I will not tell you the whole history of Ukraine. Also, I have mentioned here one resource. At the bottom of the slide, you see Ukraine in 2 minutes. There are a series, there are small, very small video films, up to 2 minutes each. And they tell the history of Ukraine from early ages and up till now. But of course, I'm not going to tell you the history of Ukraine. Just I will tell that for many, many years and thousands of years, Ukrainians have been developing the value system which we are enjoying now. And one element of this value system is that the state is ours and we are responsible for everything we do. And even if we take the newest history, which starts in 1991 when Ukrainians voted for Ukraine's independence. During these 30 plus years only, we had 2 revolutions and Euromaidan, and there were a lot of other turbulences, of course, that we have been going through and experiencing. And that brought us to understanding that there are 2 very important things. You have to control the powers. So which means that you have to control, for example, president and the prime minister and the local powers. Yeah. So when people say, oh, you know, Zelensky is a wonderful president, who says, yes, but he has got wonderful people. And the second thing is that you have to contribute something to the development of the country. And these are 2 things that are very important for us. So every time we believe that for everything that is happening in your country, you are responsible. I would like to just to demonstrate it on 2 very small but hopefully important examples. On the right, you see the Heavenly 100. These are the people who were killed during the Revolution of Dignity. Actually, there were 107 people there, and they were of different backgrounds, different ages, different status, etc. And the youngest was only 16 years old, and the oldest was 83 years old. But all of them, they were fighting for independence, freedom, democracy, so we still believe that this Heavenly 100, they have been supporting us from the heaven, because they were really the warriors of light. On the left, you see the portrait of one person. His name is Vasily Slepak, and he is the hero of Ukraine. But before he became the hero, before he arrived back to Ukraine, he spent almost 20 years in France, and he was quite a famous opera singer, performing everywhere in the world. But when the war started, and the war, as you know, started in 2014, not in 2022. Yeah, so he decided that he is also responsible for what is happening, and he would like to defend his motherland. So he arrived back home. He suspended his career as a successful opera singer, and he went to front, and in 2016 he was killed. And these are just 2 examples, but I can have thousands of those examples. There are some slides that I'm going to skip now, but you will receive the presentation so you can read yourself. Here I have noted some other important events that were happening between 2014, when the occupation of Crimea happened and the war actually started, until the 2022. And here I've got some data, some information about the Russian war against Ukraine that started in 2014 until 2022, when the invasion actually started. Finally, on this slide, you will see the Russian invasion 2024 until we win figures. But I think that, of course, the figures will be changing. They are changing every day. And finally, here you see the history of the wars. The war is really a terrible thing to experience. On these photos, you just see 3 of them, and you know, there are a lot of destructions, and of course a lot of people died and were raped and were deported and were tortured. You see this picture in the middle, which I really, so you cannot look at this without tears, because children, and more than 500 children were killed already in the war, but children are also lost, and parents, they were afraid that they will lose their children, so they will put their names and the dates of their birth and some telephone numbers on the backs of their children, so that they could find them later on, or if someone will find them, so they will bring them back to the parents. These are the awful signs, and there are a lot of things that we can, of course, learn about the atrocities of the war. But this is not, as I said, the key thing I would like to share with you. From the very beginning, of the invasion, a Ukrainian response to the global terrorists was very strong. From the very first day of the invasion, there were a long queues at the military commissariats, and there are still queues now. Besides, people organize themselves into territorial defense units, and we have also a very powerful volunteering movement. Apart from this, people on every level, they organize so-called support circles, and that could be different like teams or different circles of people who would support anything, like if you need medicine, or if you need to transport your family from one part of the city to another, or if you need anything. Yeah, so there are always people who are ready to help. And as I wasn't, I still am a part of these groups of people. It is amazing how fast people react on the needs to other. Self-organization, coordination, and networking. This is something that I think we are very good at. Another thing that is very important, Ukrainians is a very strong, spiritually strong nation, and we are committed to a common and united effort. Of course, many of you know this phrase, a bird is sitting on the tree isn't afraid of the branch breaking, because its trust isn't on the branch, but on its wings. And this is something I think that refers to Ukrainians very much, because I do remember, there was one episode at the beginning of the war, and that was the second day of the war, which I don't really like to remember probably, but I still remember it, because that was the second day of the war, and one of my friends from a different country, he called me, and of course he was very sympathetic about what is happening, and he wanted to support me. And at the same time, as we know each other for a long period of time, he said, Victoria, I have actually listened to all media in the Western European countries, and my conclusion is that we are going to sacrifice Ukraine. And that was a very painful moment for me, because I said, look, thank you very much for your opinion, but it's not important to me any longer, because what is important, what we Ukrainians decide to do and what we think. And that's from the very beginning, Ukrainians just decided that we are not going to be the victims, but we are going to be the winners. And we united so that we could go to the victory together, and everyone on each place, from the president to military people, to volunteering, and even the youngest and the oldest, all of them. So everyone does something, and no effort is small enough. On this picture, you see a big yacht, of one of the Russian oligarchs, who was trying to park this yacht in a Turkish port. And at this very time, the yachtsmen from the Yemen from Ukraine, they were there, and they decided to stop this big yacht. So of course they could not stop it, but there was an act, and they just demonstrated that even the smallest effort has to be appreciated and celebrated. That's, I think, what we have been doing all the time. Quite often, Ukrainians are compared to bees in the hive, and they are all, busy doing their own stuff. But if there is a danger or there is a threat, nobody has to be told what to do. We just do what has to be done. Finally, I would like to say a couple of words about the vocabulary we have been developing during this wartime and the invasion. And this vocabulary is very important because what we tell to ourselves is much more important even what we tell to other people. Also, I think that's what we are demonstrating and what we are telling to other people, to our partners, to people who have been in other countries who have been supporting us is also very, very important. But the messages here, so the main messages here are, yes, we can, and we are invincible together. We are unbroken. Yeah, so we will never, you will never give up because we're strong, because we're spiritually strong, and we are together. And this is the vocabulary. Also, you know, this is interesting that we never feel that, most of us at least, we never feel that we are victims. We think that this is a trial for us, and if it is a trial and if it is given to us, it means that we are maybe the only country at the moment who is prepared and who is ready to take this challenge and to go through all these turbulences and this trial. Of course, so in Ukraine, we've got the full access to the information all the time, and there are open dialogues on every level. I would say that, you know, we have developed so many different tools to communicate that I think that will be, you know, for a long period of time, we can just learn how we have organized that and how what contribution it made to their successful communication between people. And finally, I would like to say about the culture of gratitude, because I think that every day on every level, be it on the street or be it on the, you know, TV or somewhere. So we're always grateful for everything that is happening and to everyone who has been supporting us or who has been doing efforts towards this victory. So there is a whole culture of gratitude. Finally, this is the final, and you know, so language, of course, is the weapon. That's why we decide that many Russian-speaking people in Ukraine now, they decided that they will be Ukrainian speakers. Humor is a very important value and a very important element of Ukrainians' culture. We cannot live without the humor, and there are a lot of anecdotes, but I'm not going to read them now. I will leave that for you to read when you receive this presentation. On this slide, there is a summary of Ukrainian values and also the Ukrainian character. And just to say a couple of words about this war, we have declared already that the war is not actually about territories. Oh, it is, of course, about the territory as well, but this is the war. This is a conflict of different values. And I don't know whether we would like to, you know, review dimensions or review the value systems to understand how different the clashes of the values could produce such a, you know, such a war, but that could be a useful exercise for itself. This is the final slide, and I would like to say that from inside what we feel and what we think that the war is a terrible thing and a big trial. We decided to take this challenge. We think that our fight has a deep sense, and this is not fighting for Ukraine only, because actually, as you know, a lot of countries and a lot of people around the world are impacted. And we also think that we will win. Everyone, whenever you go, everyone would say, of course we will win, because we're spiritually strong, we're united, we're invincible together, and justice is on our side. Having said that, I have to note that a lot of Ukrainians had to leave their country. There are different data from 8 million people to 12 million people that I read in from different sources, but that's a big amount of people. So they moved to many different countries in the world, but maybe one of the biggest community of Ukrainians are now in Poland. And Poland has been doing a lot to not only to host those people, but also to make home for them, but also to support Ukraine throughout the way to the victory. So that's why I would like us to move to Poland. I will pass it over to Monika now. Monika, the floor is yours. I will stop sharing and you will start. And Monika will present the view from outside.
Yes, let me make sure that you can see the slide. Yes, okay. So I hope my part will take around some 10 minutes, and I really appreciate, Victoria, that you invited me to share. I thought it was very difficult to prepare this little part, even though it's not Poland, which is in the state of war. And it was very difficult because there is no one single answer. So I chose this image of a zebra because the perceptions and the reactions might be so diverse, sometimes very different from each other. And what I prepared for you is a compilation of various reactions from Poland, but also those which I heard internationally, just to show Poland in the context of a broader picture. So I hope you will appreciate. The first reaction was amazing. I have never experienced something like this. You can see here on the left-hand side, foreign journalists coming to Poland ask where the refugee camps for Ukrainians have been set up. But there are no such camps because all the Ukrainian arrivals have been housed by Polish civilians. Poles, you are incredible. There's the Visegrad channel from Twitter, and indeed up there you can see a map of people offering their home to host a person or people from Ukraine. There was an immediate activity of developing a Google app, kind of an application, which was making it possible to find a location. Also, what we saw was people people were so how to say touched by what's happening in the Ukraine that they just couldn't find a way to help. So out of restlessness, people would just go with their cars. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional when I talk about that because it was a very heartbreaking time. Private persons were offering transport from the border with the private cars, and so the people from Ukraine would also trust a lot. After crossing the border, they would just enter an alien car with some other Polish people who were promising they would take them somewhere, and it was functioning this way. So it was all very spontaneous, based on volunteers, what I would like to highlight are actually not only the first days of war, which I think were very emotional to all around us here in this space as well, but also the durability, the persistence. Maybe contrary to what I'm seeing in some other countries in Europe, at least those which I travel, the Ukraine still keeps being a very important topic. So, for example, every primary school in Poland is involved in collecting goods for Ukrainians, even now. So if only your kids go to a school, you surely will have an opportunity to bring something, or to give a donation, or to bring something. And there is also another side of it, which I will discuss later. The assistance has also been given by business, and I've been impressed how large amounts of money have been donated by private businesses, very large companies based in Poland to Ukrainian state or to Ukrainian army. It was an amazing amount of money, and it actually required a special quick fix in the taxation system in Poland, because you can donate a certain amount of money, but if you donate more, then you need to pay a tax from the donation. Now, with those huge amounts, it would have been a disaster. So you can even see the legal system, the taxation system in Poland has been adjusted to what was happening to help people in Ukraine. Financial aid has also been given to Ukrainians who stayed in Poland. So what I found in terms of data, it was 1.3 billion euro spent on supporting Ukrainians, a very heavy amount of money, heavy also in the sense of what the state can offer actually. And we probably are all entering a phase of economy which is slowing down. But that's a fact, yes. The national train and local public transport was offered for free, mobile starters for free. So this is what, like a welcome pack that the Ukrainians who were coming to Poland could be offered in the beginning. And the welcoming points are still functioning at every train station in Poland. These pictures were just taken last week. Whenever you go in the city space, you see a sign of Ukraine. The picture which is in the middle shows you the market square, and it's not huge. I was taking it from the distance. There is this flag of Ukraine. That's another building in the city center. Also, businesses clearly and openly show their support for Ukraine. And it's still everywhere in the public space. January 2023, just last week, it's going on. I have also been observing a great amount of empathy, for example, offering psychological help for those who are fleeing Ukraine, and special volunteer groups which were organizing themselves to support specific groups of people who were fleeing Ukraine, for example, people of color or internationals or LGBT plus community members, so that they would be hosted in Poland in the right way. And would be really experiencing hospitality and not hostility by getting into a wrong place. At the same time, people were experiencing incredible anxiety, but this anxiety, I think, has not stopped for some. So just last month, I was talking to a colleague who now spends 4 hours a day listening to the news in 3 languages, so that he has news in Russian, in Ukrainian, and in English. And it has evolved into habit for some people, trying to understand how complicated the situation is and trying to make personal sense. But many other people, on the contrary, have chosen to be isolated from the news as the most powerful self-protection. Even in my company, we had a little quarrel about that. Some people were saying that it's really worth to spread news about Ukraine so that we can share the reliable sources of information, while some other people were already so emotional and overloaded, they said, we don't want to have this anymore. And there was a question, what's the right approach which we can have together? It has been incredible how the war trauma was released anew, and I have never assumed that it might be keeping so much alive even in younger generation. I appreciated very much this episode of podcast or conversation by Joanna Zell about epigenetics. So what we actually inherit in our genes in terms of trauma, and I can't believe how the whole society was really touched and activated in this way. We had very difficult situations when it comes to Russians and Belarusians in the companies. You can imagine in the IT business, many IT specialists from Russia, from Ukraine, from Belarus were working in one team together. And I saw companies taking very different stances, some of them trying to find some kind of a resolution, some kind of a way to go forward. But I also noticed a bunch of companies which decided to lay off the Russian employees just because the incoherence of values, which they simply saw impossible to pursue. And I also need to highlight that the position and the statements of the Russians residing in Poland were also very diverse, from extreme support for Ukrainians and shame for the Russian state to extreme support to the Russian state and hatred towards Ukrainians. So no situation was alike. It was very very complicated. Now, on the international level, the emotions were not there. It was really the Game of Thrones and watching all national business. And I think we all can see that watching the news and media. The statement which you mentioned, Victoria, Ukraine needs to be, how to say, has to lose. Yes, we cannot afford it from the fuel perspective. It was the first reaction I heard from a colleague from Germany, and I was shocked that our points of view might be so different. And I saw these points of view evolving into those different points of view. The more distance there was, the more geographical distance there was from Ukraine.
Monika, just to add what you have just said, I also think that the closer you are to Ukraine, the more impacted you are, and the further you are, probably, you think differently. And this is, we can understand this, of course.
Yes, absolutely. When I look this way, this is because I have your video here, but my webcam is here. You might think this way. But at the same time, when we watch the German system of energy, yes, of fuel, it is very strongly impacted by the war. So I wouldn't be so sure about this direct dependence. Maybe. Sure, we have a country which is our neighboring country, and there is a war in it. So absolutely, I would agree with this as well. We discovered cyberspace as a new space of the new sphere of war, and I was very surprised to discover, how to say, farms of fake news makers. And it's very difficult to get news which would be reliable. Now, I had a funny situation with a German group. I tried to listen to some German media in German to understand the situation there. And I was working with this German group of leaders. So I asked them, hey, I'm watching this channel. Do you recommend this channel? Is it trustworthy? And they told me, yeah, sure, it's a public television. What do you mean? And I realized that people in some countries might not have awareness that media might be controlled by some specific groups of interest. And I was shocked by this naivety. Maybe we have a different experience in the Eastern Europe, also in the whole Eastern Europe, which used to be the East Bloc in the past. But we all can see it too well, even currently. So that was very surprising. The belief in freedom was resulting in naivety from my personal point of view in that very situation. Now, just to go very briefly, the burnout of helpers has become an issue after several weeks, several months, and several quarters. And it evolved into other feelings and reactions, which became sometimes burdened by all that has been caused by the country, and it created some reluctance or aversion. So we have all the kinds of reactions, from extreme support to extreme aversion, or watching our own business. For example, a situation which I encountered in the kindergarten. I wasn't satisfied with the kindergarten that my little son is attending, and I wanted to swap the kindergarten, which I am able to do. But the director of the new kindergarten told me that, sorry, she cannot take my boy because all the places have been filled by Ukrainian kids. which is very fair. But she additionally told me that if my son was Ukrainian, she would have taken him because there are bigger quotas for Ukrainians than for Polish kids. And I thought, it's a little bit unfair. I understand the situation, but that's how it really impacts us on a level of a regular citizen. Now, when you think about my city, I live in Wrocław, Breslau, which is about 600,000 people, and we had around 300,000 Ukrainians at a certain point of time. So you can imagine this mass of people in the city, and a real problem with housing, renting, accommodation. The state was trying to activate individual people to offer rooms, because otherwise probably it wouldn't have been possible. But now, as a result, we all pay more for renting a flat. Yes, all the ones available have been rented for Ukrainians, and that feels a burden. I could also go back to, let's say, a question of identity and a question of what other people or nations identify with us, or with those Ukrainians, or with these Ukrainians, depending on how you define the emotional distance as well. And I realized that even though we live in a common European Union and we seem to be sharing the same interests, now there is a question about what do we really represent as a one European Union, as a one body. So there was a feeling more than one time, a war somewhere far away in that Eastern Europe or in that Slavic Europe. So it was very difficult to discover. By the way, I visited Amsterdam in March 2022. At that time, we saw Ukrainian flags. Whatever place you would be standing in the city, even in the place where I live, you would be looking around and you would see 4 Ukrainian flags from that very point. But at the same time, in Amsterdam, I saw 4 Ukrainian flags a day. So this was such a difference of intensity. Absolutely a desire to help, but also reluctance, a reluctance, and watching your own business was very visible there. The last thing which I want to say, really, I have more slides, but I don't want to consume more time, is the butterfly effect. I have myself been very surprised how distant and how large consequences the war in Ukraine has on the global situation. For example, the famine in Egypt, rooting from the fact that the wheat cannot be transported due to broken transport ways, and the risk of riots, and we don't know what's going to happen in that country. Or a simple thing like no onion can be supplied from Ukraine, or not enough onion, and as a result the demand from onion from Poland has increased. So sometimes we need to pay 4 times more for onion in Poland, and it's not only due to inflation, just make it clear, but due to those economic dependencies. The thing which I'm really worried about, and which I can see from my perspective here, is that the whole conflict, this invasion, has really started dividing the world into the East and the West, through political play, through economic sanctions, through a game of thrones of individual countries. And I would like to know a way how we can make a difference. I wonder whether it can be stopped or slowed down to some extent. So maybe this is something that we can discuss together. Thank you very much for this part.
Monika, thank you very much. I would like just to ask one question. You have mentioned that really there was and there is a lot of support of Ukrainians. How could you explain that? Why? Why people and countries support Ukrainians? And why now? Why not in Poland? In 2014, for instance, why now? So what do you think is the change? And maybe this is
well,
the question
the
anyone.
change in relation to 2014 would be that in 2014 we did not experience this wave of people fleeing from war. So yes, indeed, Poland is the #1 country which has accepted the biggest number of people fleeing from Ukraine. Germany is the #2 country, and maybe I will find, I think I had it somewhere. I'm not sure I have it. I have this data. I don't remember the country #3 in any case. But I think it's just that it's unavoidable now. So you have to take a stance. Yes, you have to take a position. But once it happened, I think this trauma from the past, it was so strong. I wouldn't see something which would be, you know, just helping other people wouldn't be such a strong igniter for the help. I think that the past which we have in common is something that unites us.
Yeah, and this is interesting because we have discussed that with many people, with many of my colleagues in other countries, and the question was actually how Ukrainian refugees or people who are hosted in other countries, people from Ukraine, how they are different from other groups of refugees. Yeah, so what is special about them? Because so there were a number of cases when there were concerns that Ukrainians are treated in other countries differently than other refugees or from Syria, for example, from any other country. So there must be something different. And we discussed that that might be also that people in other countries, they were ready to receive, to host the kind of, you know, victims of the war, and Ukrainians do not believe, or we do not think that we are victims, and there is a kind of a gap. Yeah, because if you are open, I know, of course, I have contacts because I have been volunteering and working with many Ukrainians in other countries, and when I ask them about the challenges, there are a lot of people who report that, for instance, a challenge was that I was in the shop with my kids, and a person that was in Germany, by the way. Yeah, so and then a woman approached us, and she bought some sweets to my kids, and she wanted to, of course, to offer with the open heart. Yeah, so she just wanted to give something to those kids, and she said, but I was really embarrassed. Yeah, the mom of this kid, she's Ukrainian. She said, I didn't want her to give this sweets because I think that it's very generous, but I don't want to feel like, you know, like a victim. Yeah, and there are a lot of these cases. So I would be interested to discuss with the whole of our group your own experiences of the war, because the war has definitely the impact on the global changes. It's not the local war any longer. This is the war which has got a lot of global consequences in every field. So the question is actually how we experience this war, how we feel it, and what we as interculturalists and people would like to change to somehow meet these challenges. Anyone who would like to speak? Yeah, George, go on. George, please unmute yourself.
I want to say thank you very much for the time you spent with us before and for helping us. We have tried to get awareness of cultural issues using the diversity games, which we're distributing for free. And we've got over 100 games out there now, far fewer than I hoped we'd have. We've got them in 12 languages for places where refugees are going. The important thing for us is I need to identify what are the current issues that will inform both the people who are coming and the people who are receiving of the issues in their places of residence at this point. So I'm trying to get the people who are using these to identify what are the new issues. The game that we had was written by somebody, a Ukrainian who's did a very nice job of it, but it was before the war. And so I need and what I'm saying is I'm open to anybody who wants to send me issues that we should use to update our cultural understanding of both the Ukrainians who are coming from Ukraine and the people who are receiving them. So the door is open for that, and the more we can have, the better we can understand each other, because new issues develop in real time in culture, and we need to be aware of that. So blah, blah, blah. Basically, I want to know what's going on for you, that people on both sides of the issue should be aware of. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, George, very much. And I would like just to confirm once again that the diversity game is really helpful tool, because so it offers a secure space for people to learn about other countries and to learn how to better cooperate. So thank you very much for all your efforts, and the games that you open to everyone for free. I do hope that interculturalists have been using them all around the world.
Well,
I know, yeah.
In case anybody doesn't know about it, I'll put in the chat a notice about this, and anybody who's interested can have these games. That's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Natalia, can I ask you also about your experience? Because as I know, so you have been really involved into volunteering work, and Natalia is in Finland, and she has been living in Finland for many years. So can I invite you also to share some of your experiences?
Yes, thank you very much, Victoria and Monica, for bringing us together to discuss it. And I believe it should be much more, and maybe becoming a regular event for doing this. Myself here, I would like to share maybe thoughts from a research perspective, because I'm doing research and I have been doing it on multicultural leadership, and war which is happening not only affected me in radically changing my identity. Now I identify myself as Russian against the war in Ukraine, but also put much more strong focus on dark side of leadership development, because all my focus was on leadership development. And while we still should, as you mentioned, should still stay very much engaged and active, because war is going and it's not yet over. We need to pay attention to this. We also, at the same time, start to need to think how to avoid these wars in the future, because developments which happening in China, with Taiwan, in Turkey, reminds it very much. And even we see all these horrible consequences of this tragic war. At the same time, it accelerates now in other parts of the world. Two things which I would like to share with you and maybe hear about your comments is that we need to start to develop the thinking for societies which are very authoritarian, what president could do after president time is limited. So first of all, the presidency time should be limited. This is one thing which I see the huge difference in democratic states and authoritarian states as Russia, where president can be under power for a long time. And we know that one of huge consequences of Putin being under power so long as this war, if he would go away in 2012, this might not happen. So one thing, we need to limit time of presidents being under the power. And second one, we need to create some kind of other benefits for them they could look for. When I'm in research and professors are becoming old, they may be around 70 or 75, they entitled to the chaired session. It means they become emeritus professors. They're not holding the power, but they still have very high status. And after being with this high ego, and they are happy to continue in the status of emeritus professors, they not create conflicts. This might be in some way naive way to see it, but I believe that if in this highly authoritarian states as Russia now, we could create a new space for people like Putin to go to step aside, maybe this one solution to avoid these games, these horrible events which are happening.
And thank you very much. And so when I hear this word avoid, I was listening today to some politicians, and they were saying, you know, we of course we have been trying to support Ukraine in all different ways, but at the same time we don't want to escalate this war to the level of Russia versus NATO countries. But that's interesting because here in Ukraine, we think that this war is already happening, is going on. Which is we can say, yeah, no, it's not happening, but actually it is happening because if we take like weapons, yeah, Ukraine is on zero line, fighting and defending European values. But if you take, you know, the level of values and level of sufferings around the world, then this is actually the third world war, because a lot of people have been impacted. And actually, so we say that again and again, how this war is different, because this war has escalated the war on the level of conflicts of values. It's not about territories, it's not about something else, it's not about the interest, this is about the values that, you know, clashed. And now hopefully, and we believe that the democratic values, the European values will win and will prevail. And it means that the war is everywhere. It's not only between two countries, but everywhere else. Anyone else who would like to add something to our discussion? We've got about 7 minutes before the end of the discussion.
Bettina and Vincent have their hands up.
Yes, all right. So who was the first one?
Bettina.
Okay, great. Thank
you. Thank you, Natalia, for your comment. My line is not very good today, so I haven't heard every part of your comment, but concerning the power of legislation in Russia that says that the power of a president is limited. The thing is, I think that in authoritarian states, they people or states don't respect institutions and legislation. I think this is the problem. You could change now Putin or somehow, but if this cultural aspect doesn't change, then we have the same situation, I think. And I wanted to do a comment to the slides of Victoria. Thank you very much, Victoria, for your slides. Only one point I would suggest. You did a sort of, let's say, polarization of Ukraine and Russia. And please don't put every person of the millions of Russians in one pot. And I think all of us, we know that there are many people against the war in Russia too. Monika has said it, yeah. And Monika, you said that it's extremely complicated situation, and that is what it is. So maybe we could say it's the Russian government now, or the power in Russia, but it's not everyone in Russia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bettina. I don't want to take a lot of time, but yeah, I see your point. You think that there are good Russians and there are bad Russians. So I still believe that there are good Russians, and one third of my family is in Russia. Out of about 30 people, I only communicate with 2 people. Yeah. So this is just to explain that, you know, I can say these 2 people are good Russians, and the rest of, you know, 30 people are not good Russians. But again, let me explain that Ukrainian point of view on this, because so as you remember, we Ukrainians, and there are also different Ukrainians, not all the Ukrainians are good enough. Yeah, and some people collaborate with Russians, yeah, with Russians. Yeah, that is also a reality. So, but we are speaking about overwhelming majority of people. And if we think that we are responsible for everything that is happening in our country, we also expect that other people in other countries, also in Russia, are responsible for their powers. And they have to do something, yeah, to influence them and to change them in due time, etc. And I understand the mentality is different. I understand the history that is different. By the way, a couple of days ago, there was one colleague of mine who said that, you know, I'm so sorry that 2 people that are so close to each other are in the war. And I was surprised to hear that, because so closeness of Russian and Ukrainian people is the myth that was actually invented by Russia a long time ago. Yeah. So from this point of view, I think that there are different people in Russia, but I was commenting on the state, yeah, and the majority of Russians, let me say this, the 87% of Russians support the war in Ukraine, killing, raping, and doing all the bad things here. So I acknowledge there is a difference, and at the same time, I would still believe that everything starts with the responsibility. Vincent, you wanted?
Yes, thank you both of you, Victoria and Monika, for your contribution. Yeah, I just a little bit of a reaction. I agree with everything with what has been said, more or less. I think, as Victoria was pointing out, it's more a war on values now than on territories. Certainly, it's threatening to become a war of Russia against NATO on the expenses of Ukraine at the moment, and I'm sure it's escalating. And I think we're in a very dangerous position at the moment in this respect, geopolitically speaking. Maybe that's a local contribution to you reacting to the flags that we see. I mean, this is to show solidarity, certainly. There are lots of Ukrainian flags in the Netherlands. On my campus, we have the Ukrainian flag next to the other flags. So at least still there, which is amazing, because there is certainly a certain fatigue over the war. We also have Iranians who we also support, among others, Afghans, and we know the whole story. So I think this is a danger as well, and there is this kind of fatigue coming. And I've seen on campus, the university, I've been working with Ukrainians and Russian postgrad students. There are a few good Russians there. Sorry to say that, yeah. That also support. I've seen our local Russian school helping Ukrainians to relocate. So there is certainly solidarity on a small scale. I think this is something we should all do and keep in mind, to try to do as much as possible on a local level what we can do. And there's still a lot to do, and certainly helping the Ukrainians locally as well, as much as we can do, and more than flags only, but also helping people. Well, what I can see in Eindhoven, in my community, which is being done. But again, it is the two dangers that I see: escalating the war, and then this fatigue that there is in the population about the war, and trying to support the people. Yeah, that's two real danger that I see at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. And I was thinking now that it's interesting how many people are taking this war very close to their hearts. And this is amazing. Yeah, this is amazing. And I think, of course, we cannot even ask all the questions, and we cannot answer the questions today because we're coming to the end of the discussion soon. But there are a lot of questions that I would really like to discuss and to find the answers. You mentioned, for example, Vincent, that there is a fatigue from the war, and it's everywhere, and this is a problem. Or people that are kind of forced to live together, because a lot of Ukrainians live in different countries now. The people live together, and they have to develop new rules. And there are a lot of people who have changed their maybe even their principles and the countries, because Monika mentioned that already, and I agree that a lot of countries have somehow have been rethinking their policies. Some countries who never wanted to be to join NATO joined NATO. Some countries who said that we would never be supporting any war, so they have been. They will not send the armament to any other country. They have been very active now to support, and so there are so many different changes, and there are so many things that changed as a consequence of this. Invasion and the latest development. So I wish we could discuss it further, probably at a certain point. But I also would like, Cindy, maybe you can just say a couple of words about what is written in the chat, and then we'll close up with some nice words.
Yes, Victoria and Monika, I would like to point out that Suzanne McCulloch has written a very beautiful comment in the chat, which I think gives us a great insight as to why people help people. And she wrote, Spain has been welcoming to Ukrainian refugees despite being very far away. there's a sense of remembering the Spanish Civil War, how many Spaniards were refugees themselves.
Yeah.
Suzanne, if you have more that you would like to comment about that, I think that's a beautiful comment that we can remember why people help each other.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Now we've got a couple of more minutes for those who would like to stay with us longer. But if you need and if you would like to leave us now, we would like to thank you very much for your interest in this discussion. There will be the follow-up letter with the presentations. If you would like to see the presentations, if you'd like to ask questions, please just send us the message. And the next DMeetUp will be, Cindy, when?
The next meetup is on the 6th. Let me look it up. It is the 6th
of March.
Yes. The 6th of March, and it's going to be Marco Bertagni, and he's talking about mapping your emotions.
Yeah, that's great. I would I would like to thank everyone, but of course I would like to thank Monika first of all for her great contribution and her valuable comments and insights.
Thank you so much. It was my privilege to be invited by you, and I believe we could have a much broader conversation about not only the cultural aspect of it, but really about how we perceive the situation from each of the countries. I realize it's very diverse, so that would be a lot to discover.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's why this sharing, to organize a platform for sharing experiences and insights would be very, 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 very interesting.
May I please add that our next meeting will be at noon and not at 3 p.m.
Yes. We will try to experiment with the time.
Yes, bring your lunch. We'll have lunch together.
Thank you very much indeed. Have a very nice day or evening, or whenever you are. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for listening, for thinking together, for feeling together. And see you soon.
Thank you both very much. That was amazing. I learned a lot today.
You see,
really appreciate it.
I'm really sorry that we couldn't have, the longer discussion about this, but yeah, the format is like that. Thank you, Monika. I think that your input was valuable in many ways because you presented the Polish view, but also you have widened the perspective, and you also shared universal perspectives. So that was.
But Victoria, people have come to listen to you, so I really appreciated that you
I would
invited me to be your
Monika,
partner.
I disagree absolutely. I think that many people know already the Ukrainian perspective more or less, and of course I can expect forever. But I think what is important and what is interesting, how people who live very close by, how they cope with this situation, how they view this, and so how they are involved. And Poland, of course, is the closest neighbor. And also that is interesting because we've got a very different history. Yeah. And in our history, there are moments which we do not like. I mean, so when we were not really friends. Yeah. And
which you cannot avoid between neighboring countries.
Yes. But I think that I would really love to know more perspectives from other countries, and from France and from Germany and from everywhere in the world, from Canada, for instance. Yeah, because all of those perspectives are very different. I have been communicating with people from many countries, and I understand that how they perceive what has been happening differs from place to place, and their reaction is different. And
But-
what is also interesting that here in Ukraine, we also understand and recognize this cultural differences, diversity. Because, for instance, you know, today Scholz, he said that was him who said today that, you know, we have been supporting Ukraine, we are going to support Ukraine, but we are afraid of, you know, of confronting Russia further. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. And I was discussing this with a friend of mine earlier today, and he said, but you know, they are Germans, they have to be very careful about everything. I say, how do you know? Yeah, I mean, so no, you're not an intercultural expert. How do you know that Germans have to be careful about everything? I mean, every decision has to be carefully considered, you know. That's interesting, because if we see different cultures as different kind of decision makers, for instance. Some decision makers from, for instance, from one country, their decision making is very slow. And by the way, the word slow is something that we repeat quite often here. And also when I talk and when I ask people from different countries who are hosted in the other countries, so about their challenges, one of the most frequently used word is slow. Like, oh, you know, life is much slower here than in Ukraine. Of course, it is much slower, yeah. Or for instance, people do things slower, or the decision making is slower, yeah. And yeah, that's interesting. What does mean slower? Yeah. Slower, it means in comparison to what? In comparison to Russia or to Ukraine, because in Ukraine it's very vibrant, it's very fast. Every minute is a change, and we get used to these vibrations. And then in comparison to Ukraine, and that's why so many people are missing Ukraine, because I have been working with quite a lot of Ukrainians who feel very much depressed in other countries in spite of the fact that they are very welcomed there. They are cared about, yeah. So they feel all right there, but they still feel depressed. And when I'm asking them why are you so depressed, they say, oh, you know, it's just everything is slow, everything is not like, yeah. So this is something that also influence, I think. Oh, my internet went to
Victoria, it's all good. It's all good. I heard everything. Bettina, you also have a comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. First, when I was a bit astonished that we haven't talked about this. And one of the colleagues, maybe Monika, it was you, I don't remember who it was, did a comment on LinkedIn or some of the platforms about it. And so I'm happy that we've put that topic. On the other hand, I was a bit astonished that there was no one from the Russian colleagues who could be heard about this. Yeah. And this is another thing that I'm observing in Germany too, that now we start to systematically exclude Russian people, institutions, and so on. And I think this is not okay, because that's why I said many Russians don't want the war. And
not many, Bettina, not many. Again, take the statistics. And then I agree with you, but you know, I will tell you why they excluded, or we are trying to somehow, because so this is an instrument of influence and pressure on Russia. So we want to press something. Yeah, we would like to press. Yeah, but that is very true. We want to press on them so that they can change, because they cannot change themselves. So we start in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed. Look, all the countries of the ex-Soviet Union had somewhat similar history of 70 years, yeah? But then if you take, for instance, it's not about Putin. We can replace one Putin by another Putin.
That's it.
Nothing will change.
That's it. Yeah.
Because this is Ukraine. Yeah, this is, yeah.
excuse me, if you have lived at that time in the Soviet Union or in Russia then and had experienced that what people felt as a collapse, yeah,
Sure.
I'm not sure if I had the power and the courage to demonstrate now, because I know what's going on in the country, yeah, and I can only say I admire the women in Iran who do that, yeah, and
We can't
Can
hear
I
you.
not hear you?
yeah,
There.
yeah, okay, yeah, this was my problem the whole time too, yeah, I couldn't hear you all the time.
Yeah.
Of course, Victoria, I agree to you absolutely that it's in the responsible of the people, yeah. But if you see the single contexts of people, yeah, you have the many people, more than 100,000 who left the country because they were afraid of this repression, yeah. You told about, but others, yeah, they have arranged with it. I cannot understand that too, but I know I've lived in the Soviet Union, I've lived in Russia, I've lived in Ukraine, I've worked in the former Soviet Union countries too, yeah, at different times. And I have friends and relatives there still today. And the same with me, what you said. Some of them, I can't talk with them anymore because the same with you, they accept it. I would not say they are for the war, but they are not against, yeah, in terms of they don't know what will happen with their job, with their children, and so on and so on. And so that's the only thing I want to say, not to judge too much on them, yeah.
Because it's not about judgment. Yeah, I see your point, Bettina, but it's not about judgment. It's not about judgment. And you say, okay, so but yeah, when Ukrainians died on the squares for independence and freedom and everything, so we were just not afraid. And why we are winning at the moment? Of course, because there is a tremendous support of Ukraine. Yeah, but to gain this support, yeah, we had to do something. We had to demonstrate our absolutely. Courage, our commitment, etc. So, and this is something that, you know, so this is to say, yeah, people, you know, I understand your point, and I agree with you that it's not a good thing to be judgmental, but it's like, it's no, I do not think that all Russians are bad, but I think that they are very weak, and I think that they don't want to change it. That's I will give you an example. I've got a friend of mine. She's Ukrainian, but she has been living in Russia after, you know, for many, many years. And when it all started, and I said, okay, so maybe would you like to do something, at least to go and demonstrate your position towards the war? And she said, you know, do you think that if I go, it would be, you will benefit somehow? I said, and if I tell you that I will benefit from this, will you go? And she said, no. Why? Because I don't think that I should do that, and I'm afraid. I would lose job, etc. And you know, all the people now, the position, look at the position on the zero line. This is something that is absolutely unbelievable, because I've got friends, of course, who are on the zero line. Yeah, zero line is the front line. Russians send their soldiers who are not trained at all. They sent, actually, so you know, when we started to write the presentation with Monika, I had the number of Russians who were killed during the war, and that was the number was 121,000 people. Yeah. And then during this week, it's already 131. And you know what is happening? They push those people. They do not, people's life do not have value at all. And if they would like to go to run away, Russians kill kill their compatriots.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And this is, for us, this is just unbelievable. They are not human. Most of them, they are not human being at all. And if you see what they have been doing here in Ukraine, you cannot even understand that this level of culture can exist in the world. Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that all Russians are like that. At the same time, I think that all Russians, like all Ukrainians, are responsible for what is happening in their country. We feel that, so this is our conviction, and we know that we have changed a lot in our history, in the US history even, only because we think that we are responsible for everything. I feel I'm responsible for everything, and I know that, for instance, now there are a lot of people, because of course we are fighting against corruptionists, etc., and I hate those corruptions. I think I have to do something personally about it. So, and this is something that I think there is a big difference, but this is again about the system of values. Yeah. So what is your system of values, and how you in your interpretation of these values?
Yeah.
Interpretation.
But don't you think? Oh yes, George.
Well, I'd like to just mention that, you know, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, it's going on. But, I have been trying to support my Belarusian and Russian Sietar colleagues, and it's almost impossible to talk to them. They are afraid that every word online or on the phone is being worked at. They can't even do intercultural because it's threatening in this way. So I'm not sure how to go about supporting that. The other thing I wanted to say is that you all know I'm a US American, but I haven't lived there half my life. I consider myself an expatriate, but not an expatriate. So I'm concerned about what happens in the USA. And what I'm hearing and developing here is that we're treating the Ukrainians so well as we're treating them, because they're white. And this is a big issue around color, around you know, the fact that we have enormous numbers of Asian and Latin American people interested in leaving bad situations, who are massing on our borders. And this has, of course, become an enormous political football between the parties in the United States. We don't know what's going to happen the next day, you know. And so I think, to me, what I try to do is try to influence people as much as possible to be open to others and manage the resources that we have to support them. But it's depressing. I mean, I need to lose some weight, so I watch the news while I'm having lunch, and it just destroys my appetite, you know. So I want to thank you for continuing this discussion, and I need to leave because I have another guest coming to work with me on another project. But thank you both very much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate also what you did, Monika, in bringing the Polish picture into focus. I'd like to do that with the games especially, but I'd like to do that in the many other countries that are receiving people. So onward is my motto, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for sharing. Been great. Thanks.
Thank you very much,
George. I think the
Yeah,
diversity is a great thing. I really appreciate that, and the fact that you just distribute it for free in terms of the Ukrainians. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I always advise it to everyone and say, look, this is just, I mean, because it will make your communication better and easier. So that's great. I'm afraid that we all have to leave now because there will be another meeting soon on Zoom. And thank you very much, Bettina. Thank you very much for your contribution and for your comments.
Thank you both.
Monika?
Thank you very much.
Monika, thank you very much again and again. George, thank you very much, and hope to continue.
Hope to continue. Thank you very much, Victoria. Staying in touch.
Bye.
Bye.